So we are going to enter into the Anuvaka number 3 of the Rudradhyaya, starting from Namas Sahamanaya Nivyadhine. So in the third Anuvaka, there are 17 mantras. The mantras in this Anuvaka will start with Namas Sahamanaya Nivyadhina Avyadhininam Pataye Namaha. So Sahamanaya means one who condones all our transgressions by tolerating it. So this is the nature of Ishvara, that we do quite a few negative things, we do a lot of papa, and all of that he goes on forgiving. So we eat lot of, what kind of vada is that, Ragaru? So all those spicy stuff and all that we eat wherever we go, but then which we should not eat, but then somehow we digest it, and Ishvara is there sitting in our digestive system, and he takes care of all that. So he will go on tolerating for a long time. Similarly, even in interpersonal relationships, you don't just flare up at the smallest thing. Then a lot of leeway is given. People tolerate others. People tolerate a little bit of transgressions. And how is that happens? It is because Ishvara is sitting in each and every one of us as Sahamanaya. And then Ishvara also forgives for another good reason, that is, no one is perfect. Because no one is perfect, everyone deserves to get a certain amount of leeway and leniency. And therefore, why do you tolerate? Why does all of us tolerate others to a certain extent? It is because there is an inbuilt nature among all living beings of Sahamanaya. You will see even in the environment, ecologically, we abuse our environment and it tolerates a lot of that. But at some point of time, when the tipping point arises, and at that point of time, the virtue of forgiveness or virtue of Kshama, which is the characteristic of Shiva residing as in Sahamanaya, will stop being Sahamanaya at some point of time. So there is a very important benefit of chanting this Anuvaka, that is, if you want to increase your Kshama Guna, if you want to become more and more forgiving, then we need to do japa of this particular part. Why? Because you become very compassionate towards human frailty. And then we also learn not to hold others to the high standards which we hold to ourselves. So always we should expect some other person to be of a lesser standard than us. This is especially directed towards those perfectionists who do not tolerate imperfections in others. So therefore, Namas Sahamanaya. But then at some point of time, when we do overdo certain transgressions, at that point of time, Ishvara himself becomes Vivyadhine. So at one point of time, these transgressions, the afflictions have to be inflicted upon the human being. So that is why they say the pot of karma has filled, the pot of evil has filled. Just like you remember the story of Shishupala being forgiven by Lord Krishna for 100 transgressions. So up to 99, what was he? He was Shiva as Sahamanaya, and when it becomes 100, he becomes Shiva as Vivyadhine. So therefore, it is also very important for us to keep a count of all the negative acts that we go through. So how do we do this? Because of the Kshama Guna within us, and say that lot of papas are done by me aharnisham. I continuously, morning and evening, I'll be doing so many negative things. and then I must keep a count of all that. I mean, not literally, it is not a arithmetical count. It is, we have got to be aware of that. So the more and more aware of that, the more and more Sahamanaya is there, and the Vivyadhine part will not manifest. But at some point of time, Vivyadhine part has to manifest, and then he becomes Nivyadhine. So Namas Sahamanaya Nivyadhina Avyadhine. So how does he become Nivyadhine? See, we have the 6 changes, the Shadvikaras that happen to our body. So we have discussed this many times. That means there is birth, and whenever there is birth, there is a period of time when we are alive. Then there is growth, vardhate, then there is change, parinamate, there is decay, apakshiyati, and finally there is nashyati, the Shadvikaras are there. What is the proof that these Shadvikaras take place? How does it happen? For the karya or the outcome of this decay, which is the karana, when we are investigating the karya karana sambandha, that is relationship of cause and effect. So we know the effect of Shadvikara. What is the cause? The cause is Ishvara is Nivyadhine. So Ishvara becomes Nivyadhine, that is Karana, and Vivyadhine, he becomes Karya. As a cause of decay, for example, every single day we are losing a few cells in our body, and that is how we age. And then suddenly you find one day you look into the mirror, oh, where did that crease come from? Where did that strand of white hair come from? So how do we come to that kind of observation? It is because of this Vivyadhine. And how does he do this? As the Karya, the Karana is Shiva. The Karya is, he does it through other Devatas. See, this is the reason why he is also Mahadeva. Why do we call him as Mahadeva? Because every one of the Devatas, through them, the Vivyadhine comes. For example, every day there is some kind of an outbreak. What is this Ebola outbreak that we have been reading about? It is Shiva manifesting as Avyadhine, and as many of us know, in Indian culture, this is always associated with some kind of a Kshudra Devata. Kshudra Devata are a particular kind of deity, like smallpox as a deity, then measles as a deity, and all these deities in the Gramya or the village worship, there are temples assigned to such deities. So that is actually a representation of the Avyadhine and Nivyadhine.
So what is Nivyadhine again?
One is Karana, one is Karya. Avyadhine means one who at the right time causes a affliction. And the cause has to manifest as effect, which is Karya. Karya is Nivyadhine. So one is potential, another is manifestation of the potential. And this happens when the Sahamana state is broken. So this is how the link has to be given from one nama to another nama, as I mentioned earlier. Each one is like a train connected, the bogies connected one to another. So these are the links. In fact, every devata actually can bring us both comfort and also an affliction. For example, sun, when the sun rises and sunshine is there, you get vitamin D, you get nourishment. But at the same time, sun can also blister and it can give you sunburn. So there is an important subtext in looking at Ishvara. Ishvara in the sense, not just as the anthropomorphic Shiva. In looking at Ishvara in this perspective, it is because if you expect that God and Ishvara is all goody-goody, then we have not understood him. If we expect that Ishvara is always out to get us, then also we have not understood him. Therefore, how should we understand? It is one who transcends both good and bad. It is only when a devata transcends both good and bad and is neutral to both good and bad, then only he becomes a Mahadeva. So in this whole Anuvaka, you will see that point being driven by identifying good and bad. And the dhvani or the message of this is Karya Karana Sambandha is Rudra. And because he is the one who links cause and effect, he is also the one who removes all difficulties. So how should we parse this mantra? Apadam apahartaram. One who takes away all our apats, all our difficulties, and at the same time he also creates the Karya Karana Sambandha. That is how this mantra has to be understood. Next mantra. Namah Kakubhaya Nishangine Stenanam Pataye Namaha. The word Kakubha means one who is great, one who is extraordinary. So as a Sahamanaya, there is ordinary Sahamana, like all of us, who have certain amount of tolerance, and there is an extraordinary tolerance, a primordial tolerance. When the Shiva becomes the primordial personality of tolerance, he can be called as Kakubha. Kaku, the word Sanskrit word Kaku, Vedic Sanskrit word Kaku means the place, the position, the coordinates, sthanam. And that coordinates bhati, one who shines. And therefore he is called Kakubha. Kakubha means Kakum, sthanam, bhati iti Kakubha. One who reveals the position, the coordinates. So of coordinates of what? The coordinates of Ka. So in Vedic Sanskrit, Ka or Kam, it means bliss and joy. That's why you remember when we studied the Kasmai Devaya Havisha Vidhema. There, don't misunderstand, it is not to which God shall we worship. It is that God who is manifest as bliss. To him we offer our oblations. So that's the meaning of Kasmai Devaya Havisha Vidhema. And Agni, Vayu, Indra, the Atman, these are all called as Ka. So since Shiva is an Agni, Vayu, Atman everywhere, in Parabrahman, as Parabrahman, in all these entities, he is now known as Kakubha. And then, so he is the one who gives joy and bliss. How does he do this? By being a Sahamanaya, isn't it? As long as he is tolerant, he is very blessing to us, he is very good to us. Now comes the story, when he is Avyadine and Vivyadine, how does he do it? By becoming Nishangine. Nishangine means one who wields the cutting sword. So the Sahamanaya state changes to Avyadine and Vivyadine as Kakubha changes to Nishangine. Then he cuts down the enemies. As a benevolent Shiva, he cuts down the enemies and he cuts down our bondage. As Rudra, he cuts us off. So again capable of both preservation and destruction. And then why do we need Shiva to cut these things with a sword? You remember there are certain very complicated knots which cannot easily be unraveled. In fact, the more and more we get into that trying to unravel the knot, it becomes harder and harder to remove. Like the Guardian knot. So for the Guardian knot, what did Alexander do? He tried a little bit and then he just took a sword and cut it. So at some point of time, in the very difficult karma knots of the karma can only be cut down. There is no other way to overcome karma. See, that is why Maha Mrityunjaya Japa is done only to cut down that knot. So when Karma Granthi, Granthi means knot, when Karma Granthi is cut, then what happens? Kama Granthi, the knot of desire gets cut. When the knot of desire gets cut, Avidya Granthi, the knot of ignorance gets cut. So that is why in this particular mantra, we pray that when we are unable to unravel our karmas, then we ask him to cut it away as Nishangine. And that is why you will see in iconography, in a lot of iconography, I will share some of those temple iconography with you by email. You will see that in some form of icons, he is also wielding a sword. Shiva will be wielding a sword. And then he is also Stenanam Pataye Namaha. Stena means one who steals in a very stealthy manner, unlike a robber. So this Stena can be one who steals our imagination. See, because we get some success in certain transgressions and we say that nobody is looking at it, looking at us, and then we continue to do the errors, and then he comes as a Stena. And again, he can either come as Avyadine, Nivyadine, Nishangine. Once his Sahamana is disturbed, or he can come also as Stena. See, this is how some very good people, very noble people can also be corrupted. So here the subtext is that you can never rest on your laurels saying that I have done Shastra Abhyasa, I am a great devotee of Ishvara, so I cannot be touched by anything that is evil. Once we lose control on ourselves, then immediately he will come insidiously as a Stena. So we have to be very cautious about it. Then he is also Sahamana as a Stena. The way in which he without our knowledge, he will be protecting us also like a Stena. Then the next mantra is Namo Nishangina Ishuddhimate Taskaranam Pataye Namaha. Nishanginaha means one who has got arrows ready to be set loose on us. And how does he do it? Because he has got an inexhaustible quiver, and therefore he is called as Ishuddhimate. Ishu means quiver. So one whose quiver is full of arrows. All the difficulties we get are the arrows of Shiva. You remember when we studied the Aruna Prashna, I mentioned this, that how does he do? How does Surya do? Every time he rises in the morning, at sunrise, he will send out his rays, and then he will give you 1 day's life. And then at the end, he will withdraw your life by 1 day. So that he gives you life, he takes away life. And that is why Surya is also tied to Rudra, the Adityatmaka Rudrasya, in our actual ritual. And he is also a Taskara. Taskara means dacoit, robber. That is who comes and strikes right in front of us. So he stays in our heart, and then he will inspire us to be repentant. So as one who brings Paschatapa in our heart, he is a Stena. And a person who never repents, at some point of time the society law Ishvara, there is a hierarchy. Who will come and take the punishment on us, then he becomes a Taskara. Similar strain is continued in the next mantra also. Namo Vanchate Parivanchate Stayunam Pataye Namaha. Vanchate means one who does occasional cheating. So Vanchaka is not a habitual cheater, he is an occasional cheater, whereas Parivanchaka is a habitual cheater. So this also we have got to ask ourselves whether we cheat occasionally or habitually. especially when there is chocolate and sweets in the fridge. That's when all the resolves are gone. Then stayunam is an interesting word. Stayu means one who is highly trusted and in whom you have implicit trust. And he is the one who is going to cheat. Bagal mein churi. So he is a stayunam. Shiva is the greatest vanchate parivanchate. You know why? Because as our life experience goes on, parikshya lokan karmasitan, as the Upanishad says, as we see, you slowly start becoming mature, isn't it? You know what works, you know what doesn't work. And then you will slowly learn how to have discrimination. You will slowly also know how to forgive and let go. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time. It takes, of course, study of Shastra, it takes Guru Kripa, it takes Bhakti in Ishvara, a combination of all these things. In a very stealthy manner, Ishvara will come and teach us. And parivanchate. Parivanchate, how does he become a habitual person who cheats us away from our desire for worldly things? How does he do it? By giving us Atmajnanam. As soon as you get your self-knowledge, then all the worldly attractions will lose its charm for you. That what do we mean by losing its charm? It doesn't mean you don't enjoy. It loses its charm because you don't want to get it at any cost. You will never subordinate, you will never compromise your values. That he does as parivanchate, by turning us towards Atmajnana. And how does he become a stayu? How does our Arishadvargas, the 6 enemies, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, how do they come into us? In the most stealthy manner. Nobody invites. Is any of us have a special prayer to say, I want Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha? Nobody has a special prayer, right? It automatically comes into us, and then they actually, they completely destroy us. So that is why Shiva can be both. Namo Nicherave Paricharaya Aranyanam Pataye Namaha. Nicheru means those who stealthily move about in the forest. In the forest. And Parichara means they live in the forest, they move about in the forest, and they come out of the forest in the peripheral villages and towns, they rob and run back into the forest. You know the famous story of Valmiki and others. So that is the Purana part. But here what happens is, these Kamakrodhas are in the forest of confusion that we have, the avidya confusion. Then what happens? They manifest and appear unannounced. And they come and rob us away in such a way that we will know that we are robbed of our wisdom only after the fact. That's how we have to understand this mantra. Nicherave Paricharaya Aranyanam. So there is the famous story of the forest robber. So why take the metaphor of Aranya here, the forest? A couple of 20-25 years ago, we had gone to Simla. We were traveling in Simla, and then just we strayed a little bit from the main road and entered into a forest. We did not know which way we were going. It was just a piece of good luck that we somehow came and reached the road. Otherwise, we could be roaming about in the forest for the rest of our lives. That's the nature of forest. So once we are in the forest of ignorance, is there any way to come out at all? So the only way to come out is pray to this Nicherave Paricharaya. So then we go there and surrender to Shiva and come out of this forest of confusion. This again is this metaphor that is there in the story of Dhruva. See, in the story of Dhruva, this boy, as you all know, he goes into the forest because just his mother said, you go into the forest and then you pray to Narayana. Then everything will be all right. You will be able to get your rightful place on the right lap of your father when you are sitting on the throne, isn't it? So he is in the forest, he doesn't know what to do, where to go, how to pray. That was then Narada comes into the forest and gives him the Vasudeva mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So how does this Ishvara, who is Nicherave Paricharaya, when we are in the wilderness of the forest, as a guru, forest of ignorance, as a guru, he will just appear from nowhere and give us that mantra with which we can come out. We'll continue from mantra number 6 in the next class.